Great. So we go back to these 8 mindful steps to happiness. So we talk about the first step last time. For the last couple of lessons, we talk about the first step, and then now today we go on to the second step. So the second step we all know is Samma Sankappa. Okay, this is Samma Sankappa. This is the Pali version of skillful thinking, or you should. Some people translated that as a skillful thought, but bear in mind that this thought has a factor, a purposive factor in it. So that I think the most proper word to use is actually skillful intention, because intention actually encompasses thinking. But the most important is the intention, and then there will be the thinking process. If we do not express that intention right away into bodily or verbal actions, then you have a little bit a gap which is filled by thinking. Okay, so remember the right view is Samma Ditti. It represents the cognitive side of our mental activity, whereas Samma Sankappa actually represents the purposive aspect of our mental activity. So these two are actually inseparable, but a lot of teachers actually separate them, and I think it's okay to separate them, and I think it's useful to separate them too, but don't try to really separate them. Okay, and when you start to sort of put the Eight Noble Path into your skillful living, then these two actually come hand in hand. They should be, it should be coming hand in hand. So because they interact with each other, and with skillful thinking, then you have to have skillful view in it. And with skillful view, in order to view skillfully, you have to have skillful thinking behind it. So each one of it is in the other's place. Skillful thinking would be inside skillful view, and where skillful view would have a place in the skillful thinking. So it's really very difficult to separate them. Okay, it's just like a two sides to your palm, to your hand. You cannot separate them, but yet they are different, right? It's quite different, the palms and the top of the hand. So as we are aware, thinking can make us happy, or thinking can make us miserable, right? So because thinking can bring either this happiness or unhappiness, because these emotional predilections influence our views, and our views actually determine the predilections. So we tend to lock a lot of times. We tend to lock ourselves into really unhealthy thought patterns all the time. A lot of times we do lock ourselves into unhappy pattern if our awareness is not sharp, if our awareness is not strong. So that will keep us going round and around in these cycles of miseries that we call samsara. So we tend to lock into these unhealthy thoughts, and we turn ourselves around these unhealthy thoughts all the time, and creates a lot of miseries and difficulties for our lives. So this step actually offers us. Oh, I forgot to. This step actually offers us to come out of our old habits, and allow us to actually find an exit out of the old habits. And also it also helps us to redirect our thoughts in a very beneficial way. So there are actually the two goals. But in order to reach these goals, we need to make sure that we need to couple this right skillful thinking with the right view, and to be mindful, continuously mindful about this view, and continuously mindful about this intention or thinking. Okay? Without that mindfulness, there's no way that you can keep yourself on track. No way. Okay? So it's just like if you're blindfolded, how can you walk a straight line? So without mindfulness, that means you're blind, somehow blind, or half blind, or losing, 3/4 blind. So you cannot walk on a straight path, and you cannot walk on the path that you would like to walk on if you are blindfolded, if your vision is not good. Okay, so without mindfulness, that means we are actually losing our vision, losing our sight. All right, so that's actually a very important thing to bear in mind, and also to be constantly reflecting upon yourself. Am I mindful in this aspect? Am I mindful? Okay. A lot of times when we are not mindful, we do really lose track. Okay. So this actually, if it's coupled with right view, it helps us to redirect our thoughts in positive and helpful directions. So if we begin to understand things correctly and rightly through mindfulness of these key points of the first step, remember the last first step, our mind will naturally flows into the skillful intention. We don't have to force it. It comes spontaneously and it comes naturally. Okay? So remember, this skillful thinking here refers both to thoughts as well as to intentions. It's not just thinking on its own or just intention on its own. It has two parts, thoughts and intentions. So skillful thinking, why do I have to go into these details? Because in these details you know where to put your mind in, how to be mindful. Okay, so the Buddha said there are actually threefold to this skillful thinking, and each of these actually counteract the other one. So the first one, he said, is the intention of renunciation, and then the second one he said is the intention of goodwill. We didn't talk about this when we talk about the Eightfold Path. And the third one is the intention of harmlessness. And you can see these three intentions are intentions of positivity. They are not intentions, they are not negative intentions. These are actually positive intentions. But a lot of times we don't have these kind of positive intentions. A lot of times we actually have a lot of negative intentions. So what are these negative intentions? So the intention governed by desire, okay, and the intention governed by ill will, and of course the opposite of the intention of harmlessness, there is this intention governed by harmfulness. So you can see these three are completely opposite to these three. And that means these three could neutralize these three if any one of these arises. So the intention of renunciation can actually displace the intention of desire. And the intention of goodwill can displace the intention of ill will. And similarly, the intention of harmlessness can displace the intention of harmfulness. And why did the Buddha teach this? Because he said one thought, if it arises, if you have another thought arising, you can easily displace the previous thought. But if you do not have that wholesome thought arising, when this unwholesome thought arises, then you cannot displace that. then that next moment, then that unwholesome thought started to multiply. Okay, so that's why it needs a lot of mindfulness in order to really know that you have an unwholesome thought that has arisen. But a lot of times we don't. And that's where all the miseries come from, right? So, and you see that intention governed by desire. This is the tricky one is where does that desire rooted? Where? Or what? If you want to say what is the root of this desire? Craving, right? Greed. Yeah, it roots in that deep roots, and also this ill will is rooted in the aversion, right? This craving and ill will, they are so deeply rooted. It's very, very difficult for them to yield. They don't yield very easily. They don't come up to the surface very easily. And when they don't come up to the surface, it's very difficult to tackle them. Okay? And even though that they come up to the surface, because they are so strong, and with a very weak mind, it's even more difficult to tackle them. Okay? And you can see from today's world, people holding their cell phones and they're constantly playing games or constantly texting, constantly. And I mean, you go to the mall, and you go to a food court with a couple sitting there. They should be dating and talking and exchanging conversation. No, they text, and she texts and he texts. There's no conversations. There's no the distance between human beings become wider and wider, greater and greater. There's no communication at all. And where does that come from? It comes from a very deep-rooted craving. Constantly keeping one's busy. Constantly keeping all these senses busy because of this craving, this old seed of craving. And this craving is a craving, and the ill will actually are so difficult to tackle. I think we all have experienced that, haven't we? And even though we might be able to really deal with them, a lot of times we only deal with the superficial one. The deep-rooted one is very difficult for them to actually to be dug up, unless you actually persevere. Persist in your daily practice, and develop a very strong mindful mind. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult, and sometimes it becomes impossible. We were at the prison last night, and we had not a very pleasant piece of news. One of our friends. He's been with us like over 3 years now, almost going into 4. Yeah, so he has actually improved a lot, greatly improved a lot. But lately he was contacted by his biological family. They haven't met for over 56 years. He didn't know that he has a biological family. So all of a sudden, it seems that he has a whole bunch of family members. And that really shocked him. Ever since January, right? December. Yeah, before January. So I kept, when I was in Hong Kong, I wrote letters to him. So, explaining to him why this happens and how can he deal with this and everything. So he sort of started to get settled down. But I think this insecurity actually became it's really shocking, really. So he sort of being thrown back into the ocean again. So he was in a lot of emotional distress lately, and whenever I went in, I had time to talk with him, and he seemed to be better. Then next week, he was like constantly in that cycle. So I missed seeing him last week. I was supposed to go, I didn't go. And last night, one of his fellow inmates told us that he's not going to be there for quite some time. I said, what happened? He said, well, he's got shipped out. I said, where to? He said, don't know, maybe Masqui. So it's a punishment. He must have done something. He used to have a lot of anger, and he was the one who actually said, 3 deep breaths, and I walk away in 1.5 breaths. But I guess he didn't do it this time. So when such a strong, deep-rooted anger comes up, if that mind is not grounded, is not sharp enough, it's very, very difficult to contain yourself. And so you can easily express that. But what can we do? We have done our best. Anyway, so where these things, these desires, ill wills, harmfulness, how do they arise? In what form do they arise? In what form do they present themselves? In the form of like thoughts, right? When you're angry, you don't actually see an anger there, right? It's thoughts. Oh, I'm angry, or ill will, or desire. Okay, I want something, and then this thought keeps churning inside, keeps multiplying in the form of thoughts. That's why it's very, very important to have the right thought. And so the Buddha said, you can eradicate these thoughts by replacing these thoughts with a wholesome thought. Like if you have a wall and there is a broken brick there, and you replace a brick, or a pillar, if you have a rotten pillar, and you don't need to take the whole house down, you can just replace that rotten pillar with a good pillar. Okay, you just replace them. But in order to see that it is rotten, you need a very, very sharp and clear mind. And in order to know that it's time to replace them, you need a lot of wisdom. Otherwise, you may pull it out too early, or too soon, or too late, right? So middle path. So you can replace an unskillful thought with a skillful thought. That's how you can actually eradicate the unskillfulness. So greed comes as a thought of desire, whether that desire is sensual, or whether that desire is wanting, or whether that desire is, acquisitive, or whether that desire is possession of something, doesn't matter. And then the thoughts of renunciation actually provides the remedy to greed, because it comes from the root of non-greed too. We do have that non-greed inside us, but it's just overmasked by the roots of greed. Okay? So if you could actually allow this non-greed thought, the thought of non-greed come up, and replace that thought of greed, replace that thought of sensual greed, or acquisitive greed, or possessive greed, then you will be able to activate that root of non-greed, and then be able to replace the root of greed. Okay? So, because why? At any moment of life, at any moment of your thinking, no two thoughts can arise at the same time. So, a non-greed thought or a greedy thought cannot arise at the same time. You can only have either one of them. Okay. So, when you become mindful of there is a thought of greed, are you able to switch immediately to a thought of non-greed. And that takes a lot of stamina and determination and awareness. So, similarly with ill will and harmlessness, it's the same. You can also do that with the same strategy, correct? Because all these unskillful thoughts could be easily displaced with skillful thoughts. So far, so good? Okay, so the Buddha said there are 3 categories of thoughts. The thoughts of desire, ill will, and harmfulness. Before his enlightenment in the forest, the Buddha actually, in his deep meditation, he discovered that his thoughts can be distributed into two categories. And this is the category, the thoughts of desire. But on the other hand, is the thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. As I said just now, these 2 thoughts cannot exist at the same time. Okay? And with the thoughts of the first category arises, it leads to harm for oneself and also for others. And it obstructs our inner wisdom. The wisdom doesn't come from outside. Wisdom doesn't come from having a PhD degree. No, those are knowledges. Those are not wisdom. Wisdom is this inner purity, inner knowledge, you can also call, and that actually is the wisdom and compassion. Okay, so this we call Buddhahood, or you can call them bodhicitta. 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 That means a mind filled with Buddha nature. Okay, bodhicitta. So actually, when all these unwholesome thoughts arise, they will lead to harm, not just for us and for others. We can see that, right? If we have a very strong sensual desire arises. I just watched the news before I came for this Dharma sharing. If one has a very strong sensual desire, for lust, for example, come up, they will easily express them, either physically or verbally abusive. You can abuse, verbally. Even you have that desire of lust, you can even abuse verbally. And just watch that news. There is this school in Los Angeles. They caught 7 out of 14, 12 kids who are between 14 years old to 17 years old of sexually abusing 2 female students in school for 1 year. And you can see, why does it happen? Why does it happen? Because this desire arises, and these kids don't have this mindfulness. They don't have this right thought in them. They don't think it's improper to express their intentions into actions like this. And so these express into actions and cause harm to others first, and now they got caught, so they cause harm to themselves. And once they got caught, of course they have a lot of negativity. They may have fear, they may have anger, they may have a guilt feeling, shame, whatever that comes with that. That will be all this dust on this mirror, right? That means it's obstructing the inner wisdom to arise with all this dust. So that means we go back to that cycles of miseries again. How can we liberate ourselves if we have constantly putting all this dust back into the mirror? How can we see ourselves clearly in the mirror? How can we allow this inner wisdom to arise, to unveil, to be unveiled? So that's a very, very serious issue. Okay, so in order to live happily, we need to actually watch ourselves. Okay, so as you can see, the thoughts of the second kind, this one, is very, very beneficial. It leads to growth of wisdom, and also it helps us to attain liberation. And as the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, we constantly go back to these few verses of Dhammapada. He said, if you perform skillful actions right now, right here, happiness is with you already, right now, right here. If you perform unskillful actions right now, right here, it will experience unhappiness right now, and you will experience unhappiness in the world to come, in all the worlds to come. That means the future worlds. Okay? Tomorrow is the future. Next year is already a future. Next life is also a future. So right now, right here, you experience unhappiness. Then in the future, you experience unhappiness. It's up to us to choose. It's up to us to choose. Nobody can force us to do anything. So seeing from here, we all know that this thought is actually the forerunner, or the intention is the forerunner of actions, directing all the bodily and all the verbal actions, and also mental actions, and stirring them into being expressed into actions, and using them as a way to express themselves. So when wrong view prevails, the outcome is wrong intention. And with wrong intention in place, wrong actions will come. So it's all a chain reaction. It's a chain of actions, what do you call the first car of the train? The engine. Yeah. So if the engine of the train is wrong, is not working properly, then the whole train would be, it can move the whole train. Or if the engine is derailed, then the whole train will be derailed. Or at least the few cars that actually connected to the engine will be derailed. Okay, so it's actually very, very, very crucial. These two are the pilots. These two, the right view and the right intentions, are the engines. Without either one of them, it doesn't work. Okay, so if we recognize the law of karma, we know whatever that I do, I will reap the results. Then we will, if we are wise enough, if we are clear enough, we won't put ourselves into that black spot. Okay? So when we put this right view and the right intention together, this will counteract all these unwholesome roots. And it will also remove the delusion. That is actually the primary cognitive defilement. So each flickering moment of correct understanding could contribute to the eventual eradication of delusion. So don't underestimate any flickering moment of life. Every moment is so precious. Every moment of life is so precious, because any moment is the moment that you can actually have either the unskillful thoughts, unskillful view, or you have the skillful thoughts or the skillful view. Okay, so the other two roots, the craving and the ill will, as I said just now, are the emotional defilements. So the Buddha said we better strengthen the second kind of thoughts. We better strengthen these kind of thoughts in order to be able to displace these kind of thoughts. Okay? So it's a very serious matter. This right intention is a very serious matter. And the skillfulness and the mindfulness to this intention is also a doubly serious matter, because without the mindfulness you won't be able to have the right intention. Okay? So he said the intention of renunciation. Now we can see the way the world is completely filled with desires, seeking happiness, pursuing objects in which we think we imagine that they will bring happiness, they will bring fulfillments. But those happiness and fulfillments are sort of like very transitory, right? They are not permanent. Whether it is wealth, whether it is fame, whether it is status or power or whatever, doesn't matter. They are all just like transitory. It will go, eventually go. So the intention of renunciation is actually the opposite of seeking lust and desire. Okay, but if we start to wanting to renounce, it's going to be difficult. Why?
Wouldn't that be itself a craving?
No. Why? When you want to renounce something, or when you want to change yourself, did you notice that it can be difficult? Why?
Because you're so used to the old habit.
Very good, because you're so used to the old habit, and then there will be a very strong inner resistance. That, oh no, I don't want to do this. I cannot do this. I don't need to do this. You have all the excuses not to do this, right? And as we constantly talk about in the last few lectures, was we didn't want to come out of that comfort zone. We are so used to that comfort zone, and coming out of the comfort zone could be very challenging. Okay, so if we want to turn away from greed, it's not easy. So it's not so easy to turn away. If we want to abandon the greed, we need to remove so many obstacles. And one of the obstacles is this inner resistance. Then the mind will tell you, it's okay. Go ahead and do it. It's okay just for one more time, or two more times, or three more times. It's okay, nobody knows. It's okay, you are all right. You have done this before. It's okay, they will forgive you. It's okay. You know, all these inner resistance will come because there is an inner voice telling you that it is okay. You have done this before. Or no, it's not okay to go out. It's too risky to go out. It's too challenging out there. You better come back here. All these things that started coming up when you want to change yourself. There are challenges coming all the time. So when you see challenge in life, that means you need to change. It's a lesson for you to learn. It's not a lesson for that challenge to go away. It's a lesson for you to use that challenge to change. A lot of times when people think, oh, I don't like this person, how can I get rid of him? Or how can I get rid of her? There's no problem with that person. It's your own problem. You see the problem your own problem in them. A wise one would see, oh, that's the reflection of my own mind. A stupid person would see, that is her problem. It's all her, it's all him. If you make me unhappy, it's you make me unhappy. No, it's you yourself make yourself unhappy. And you should be grateful to that person. Oh, you bring me out.
Stop pointing at me, please.
What did he say? What did he say? Oh, no. No, I wasn't pointing. I was pointing at the floor. I'm sorry. So, turning away from abandoning the greed, one does remove that obstacle that will hinder one from attaining happiness. So it's not easy, but of course the Buddha didn't demand us, all of you come and shave your head to become monastic. It's impossible. It's not realistic. It's not impossible. It's really impossible. And he doesn't ask people to leave the household life or discard all enjoyments. You need to be really sulky and very serious all the time. You cannot laugh. You cannot enjoy life. No. He said you can enjoy life because when you practice the Dharma in the right way, you will be the happiest person on earth. Because every challenge is an opportunity for you to grow. Every challenge is an opportunity for you to actually displace whatever negativity that you have. Okay, so whenever we want to change, that inner resistance could really raise its head and put us in a very soft spot. And then when your mind is not strong, when your mind is not aware, when your mindfulness is not continuously strong, then you will be easily given in to that resistance, and you will go back to that old pattern again and again. So, how can we break the shackles? The Buddha said we should not suppress ourselves, nor express the desires. And we should not try to drive those desires away with a mindful of, because when we start to drive those desires away, the mind will react with the other kind of negativities. Right? You will maybe fearful, you may be angry, you may be whatever. Okay? So, and it's either way, it's not right. The best tool, he said, is you should start to see, to understand. And the real renunciation is not forcefully trying to compel ourselves to give up things that we still cherish, but changing the perspective on them so that we can look at them from a different point of view. When we understand this nature of desire, we'll be able to actually investigate it closely from all directions, and we'll be able to understand it from all directions. When that right kind of understanding come together, then it will be much easier for us to actually displace those shackles. So really, that the most important thing is the right kind of understanding, and with the right kind of understanding, with a wise consideration, we'll be able to actually influence ourselves to steer ourselves back onto the right track. All right? So he said we should see everything, all these shackles, as dukkha. Because once we start to see them as dukkha, we don't want to be unhappy all the time, right? Nobody wants to be unhappy all the time, right? Though sometimes we sulk, but deep down we don't want to be unhappy. We want to be happy, but it's just these old habits come up. So he said you really need to understand this cycle of desire before you can actually start to really deeply understand. Oh, the color looks the same. Anyway, okay, never mind. Okay, when this cycle of desire, this is supposed to be red. Okay, this desire, we have a desire that arises, springs up. So, when that desire comes up, I don't know how to make this a PowerPoint like appears, one by one, so you can see the whole cycle here already. But let us look at this cycle here. This desire springs up. That means in the deeper part of your mind, there is a sense of lacking or a sense of wanting. Right? Get it? Okay? So that's why you have a desire. That's why you have this desire. If I don't have this, for example, when people like the squirrels, they have eaten a ton of hazelnut, but why do they still go and collect hazelnut and bury them? Why? Because there is this desire, this sense of fear that they don't have enough food in the winter. So they keep burying them, but they don't know where they bury them. Do they ever find out where they bury them?
All through your garden. Yeah. You'll see empty shells. Yeah. In the spring.
They know where they're buried?
Mm-hmm.
But why in the spring we have hazelnut trees here and there?
They've gone there in the winter, and they're gone like that. They buried them by that rose bush over there, and the next thing you know, you see all these empty shells all around rose bush.
Yeah, but sometimes we see all these little plants coming out. Hazelnuts plants, walnut plants coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That means they forgot.
They've left enough there.
Yeah, they forgot, right? So why do they bury? Because they are afraid that they would not have enough food throughout the winter.
Stellar jays do too.
Yeah.
They bury sunflower seeds.
Strong fear.
No, you have two types of squirrels. The normal squirrel is the one that just digs. It's embedded into their brain. They just dig, and they actually forget.
They actually forget.
They actually forget. So that's why the trees will go here and there. So they get lucky sometimes. The second type of the squirrels are the one that meditates, and they just look at the other ones and then and then they're the one that digs in. Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
I thought there were really two kinds of squirrels. The mindful squirrels, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. We all need to be very mindful. So in order to this sense of lacking and this pain of wanting, in order to end this pain or end this fear, we need to fulfill the desire. Right? Example, there is this hunger. Oh, I'm hungry. And this desire to come up wanting food, otherwise this pain of hunger persists. So before you have the food, you will still want food. You will still want food. So that's when people getting, obese, really obese. Why? Because they're constantly wanting food. Otherwise, they will have this pain of hunger in them. Right? Logical, sensible, right? So this desire. Because of this desire, because it's a sense of lacking, a pain of wanting. And then in order to fulfill the desire, we go and do things. We go and do things. All right? So, does it mean that we're going to sit here being very, very dumb and limp, not doing anything? No. There are skillful desire. Wanting to help people, wanting to offer service, or wanting to improve oneself. That's also a desire. That's a skillful desire. But a skillful desire doesn't have this sense of lacking and the pain of wanting there. Okay? So it's completely opposite. Right? Yeah? So every time every time I look at these things, I saw the Buddha was so wise. Nobody can beat him. Nobody. He's so wise. Jeez. So we when we want to fulfill this desire, we start to drive ourselves nuts. Going to do all sorts of things to fulfill. But when these being fulfilled, then there comes another state of mind is when they're not fulfilled, then we become frustrated, disappointed, or even despair. But when they are being fulfilled, then there comes another aspect is we want to secure that position. And we want to safeguard my territory. So the squirrel wanted to protect all the nuts. So he tried to, to fight off any squirrel that would come to take his nuts. Right? And then we want to, so what do we want? If we have this, we want more. And we want to gain more. Or we want to rise higher. Or we want to establish tighter controls, whatever. We want more and more and more. If that desire is not being rectified, or is not being addressed properly. Okay? So, from this cycle of desire, we see this strong attachments actually brings so much miseries, so much dissatisfaction, and so much unhappiness. Why? Because the object of this desire is transitory, is impermanent. And we are so foolish to believe in any moment of life this is going to last. This is going to be permanent. Because of this delusion. If we start to understand properly this real nature of this desire, which is impermanent, and we will be very patient to hang on one more moment mindfully and see how you are, how it is going to change. If we are patient enough to hang on for a moment more, a moment more, a moment more, then there is a great chance that we will be able to come out of this desire. Or we'll be able to stop ourselves expressing this desire into physical or verbal actions. Right? Good. That's how we can actually break the shackles. Don't know whether I can finish this slide. Okay, I think we can. So the Buddha said, how can we break the shackle? Is we have to address it. We know that this is dukkha. This is sufferings. And we have to become constantly mindful of this is a dukkha. And because of this desire, dukkha always accompany the desire, the unskillful desire. Unhappiness always accompany. So we could also be mindful, contemplate directly the benefits of renunciation. How can I be happy? If I give that up, would I be more happier? or will I be less happy? Okay, so if we start to learn how to give up a little bit, we will start to see, really, we become lighter. Mentally, physically, we become lighter. And we know, by renouncing, I actually become lighter. And I'm mindful of that, and that happiness, that ease, is actually the result of giving up, the result of renouncing. So, and this renunciation is actually helping us to transit from a very gross, very rough, entangling pleasures to a very exalted happiness, a very blissful happiness. So it actually helps us to better ourselves from a rough you to a very soft you, to a very happy you, and to a very peaceful you. Isn't that worthwhile? It is very worthwhile. So, and it's also, he said, when you start to contemplate this dukkha, we know this actually has its effect is because it starts to purify our verbal and physical actions. Remember the threefold training, right? The sila, the morality, that means it purifies our conduct. So when we start to actually contemplate more on the benefits of renunciation and really start to remove the dukkha that accompanies the desire, actually we are actually helping ourselves. The first thing is our conduct, our behavior will become pure and pure, more pure. And also our concentration will become enhanced. And eventually when these two steps walking hand in hand, it nourishes the seed of the wisdom that lies deep in us, all of us. And eventually we will be able to come out of our own miseries and liberate ourselves from this fear and sorrow that arise from desire. Okay? So, that's what the Buddha said. So, if we have persistent practice, the results will come naturally and spontaneously. But if you don't practice continuously, if you do not develop this mindfulness continuously, it's just like drops of water in the ocean, doesn't make a difference. Or it's just like in the dry summer, if you turn on the tap full blast, you use up all the water right away. But if you use drop by drop, little by little, then you have water last for a long, long time. So, I all the time I constantly remind you guys is the daily practice is very important. Because anytime things can happen. And you can be caught just like that. And if you do not have awareness, if you do not have mindfulness, like the friend that from the prison, if you are not mindful just at that moment, you will be caught by your own desire. You'll be caught by your own shortcomings, and nobody can help you. Nobody. So don't have that wishful thinking in your mind. It will work out accordingly. That's very scary. And that's very risky also. Okay? So through repeated contemplations, through repeated development, through repeated cultivation of mindfulness, one thought will knock off the other one. The skillful thought will knock off the unskillful thought. But if you do not have this mindfulness, the unskillful thought will knock off the skillful thought, and it replaces the skillful thought, and that's where trouble starts to come. Okay.